Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, Bean here, and today I'm coming at you with my July wrap-up, which is going to be interesting because I'm reading fewer and fewer books that I actually physically own, apparently. This month I read 10 books, so I'm pretty proud of that, did pretty well there. I ended up reading, I believe 6 of them were ebooks. Yeah, so I read a solid number of ebooks this past month. I read a couple of library books as well, and then one book that I own. Yeah, and I started about 15 books, really, is really what ended up happening is that, so in the last weekend of July, we went to a Polycon, and while at a Polycon, you do as a Polycon does, and you sit and you read on your Kindle most of the time, and I think I started 4 or 5 different books depending on the mood that I was in at that particular hour, so I jumped back into mood reading. That being said, I did complete 4 of the 6 books that I set out to read. One of them I'm still not sure I'm going to read, period, but from Blood and Ash, I probably will pick up pretty soon. I am interested. It's not super high up on my list of interests just because I'm kind of about it, honestly. I don't know. It's super hyped up, so I'm really worried it won't live up to the hype. But yeah, and I got a whole bunch of books from a Polycon, and I started reading 1 or 2 of those, and just so many things have been happening. But I managed to finish books, and I actually managed to finish several books on the trip, which was kind of nice. But we're gonna hop right in at the beginning of the month, and I did not start off the month on a good note, unfortunately. The first book that I read in the month of July was Bluff by Jane Stanton Hitchcock. I DNF'd this book at 50 pages. The main reason I DNF'd at that point is because this book is only about 300 pages long. It's a short book, and I think it was 50 to 75 pages I DNF'd it because I just was not getting what I was wanting from this book. I wanted it to be a murder mystery, and in the first scene she fails at the murder and doesn't kill the right person, and it just, I don't know, the way it was approached, I wasn't expecting it to be high society drama type book, and that's exactly what it turned out to be. So unfortunately, this book was a miss for me, and I have been DNFing more, so I did end up DNFing this one. The next book I read was actually a graphic novel, and this is one that I picked up at the library just randomly because it caught my attention, and that is Invisible Differences, A Story of Asperger's Adulting and Living a Life in Full Color by Julie Dachas, with Mademoiselle Caroline as the illustrator. This book was so interesting and really, really, really well done. I honestly loved this book. It is a graphic novel written by a young woman who realizes in, I believe, her 20s that she has Asperger's syndrome, and just the whole how she feels about that, and how her friends reacted, how her coworkers reacted, and how everyone around her reacted to her announcing or informing them, like, this is why I act different, this is why this, and this. Honestly, I think it was very well done. I think it was very informative, on top of being a slice of life at the same time. So this was probably my favorite book of the month. It got a 5 out of 5. I highly recommend it. There are some parts where she does talk about her personal life a lot, so I guess be aware you are looking at someone's actual life. So yeah, I mean, I loved this book. I highly recommend it for anybody who has any interest in Asperger's. It also has some great references in the back of places to go for more information, which is always cool. The next book I read was an audiobook, and that was Slaying the Dragon, A Secret History of Dungeons & Dragons by Ben Riggs. So, fun fact, Ben Riggs ended up coming to the library that I work at, and he did a little talk there, and there were a solid number of people who showed up to hear him talk about his book and his experiences, and this was a very interesting audiobook. So I did listen to the audiobook. I got it off of NetGalley, so thank you to them. But this book, I expected it to be more about Dungeons and Dragons as a game itself. It's not. It's about TSR, which is the company that developed Dungeons and Dragons, and their kind of all over sordid history of sorts. So it was interesting, but it also took me a little bit because within a couple chapters I realized this wasn't what I expected. But that doesn't mean it was bad. It was still a very good book, and I still recommend it, definitely. This one got a 4 out of 5 from me. The next book that I read was another one on my TBR, and that was The Recovery Agent, the first book in the Gabriella Rose series by Janet Ivanovic. This is a new release. This is the first book in her brand new series, Gabriella Rose, who is a recovery agent. So basically she's hired by people to find things, people, or I guess places technically too. And she ends up taking a job for her grandmother, pro bono. She obviously doesn't ask for any money of it, but looking for an old treasure. She's looking for a treasure of a pirate that her family is supposed to be descended from. And she realizes that she left the chest that could have the treasure map in it at the house she lived at with her ex-husband. Which she left for him. He has the house now because she now lives in New York. And it's so interesting. She ends up having to go in, and she sneaks into the house to steal this map, and he's like, well, I'm coming with you. And it's like, okay. So it's so fun because it's actually told from both of their perspectives. Third person, watching over their shoulder, hearing some of their thoughts. It's a lot of fun. I always have loved Janet Ivanovic's writing. It's kind of become a comfort read. Her writing has become a comfort read for me, if that makes sense. Just because it tends to pull me out of any reading slump I'm in as well. And this one definitely pulled me out of a reading slump, which was very nice because I was very tired of not reading. I did most of my reading in the second half of the month, honestly, guys. It was kind of bad. It was a little bad. I ended up giving this a 4.5 out of 5, I believe, or a 4 out of 5. This does take place after Hurricane Katrina, and her family's houses have basically kind of been destroyed. So the reason they want this treasure is in order to build the town back up. So I think it was very cute. It was very well done, and I do look forward to the rest of this series. I have no idea when it's going to come out. There isn't anything up anywhere about it, so I'm very curious. And I would love to see where this story goes, because this story does involve mafias and drug cartel. Like, it's interesting, but it was fun, honestly. So highly recommend this one. The next book I listened to, actually, I did get the audiobook for this one, and that was What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher. Now, I have read a T. Kingfisher novel before. I read The Hollow Places, and I really liked that one, and that one actually did scare me. This one scared me, but in the less one, it more creeped me out than anything else. So this is a retelling of Edgar Allan Poe's The House of Usher. Which, if you haven't read, is very creepy and almost creepier than this story, I'm not gonna lie. But without giving things away, our main character, the AC just turned on if you can hear it, sorry. The main character receives basically a summons from their best friend who is supposedly dying. And so they rush to the House of Usher in order to be with her as in her final days and to see if there's anything they can do, only to realize she has kind of fallen into a very strange sickness, and her husband is suffering from fractured nerves and just is all around very anxious and very upset about everything. And it's basically up to her, one of the husband's American friends, and a woman who studies mushrooms. There's a name for that. What is it? British mycologist. Mycologist is the word. She studies mushrooms. And they basically have to try and figure out what's happening and what is happening at the House of Usher and why are the rabbits being creepy. Yeah, that's the best I got. The rabbits are being creepy. Yeah. I gave this a 4 out of 5. It was well done. Not my favorite, but it was well done. Next, I read a graphic novel. I read Over the Garden Wall, Volume 2 by Pat McHale and Jim Campbell. They are the creators of the show Over the Garden Wall, and this one was wonderful. It was 2 separate stories. The first one told from 2 different points of view, and the second one was just a lot of fun. I don't want to go into them because I don't want to spoil them. If anybody wants to read them, they're a lot of fun. I highly recommend this graphic novel series if you have seen the show, because it's just more adventures with our favorite characters. So, highly recommend. I gave this one a 4.5 out of 5. Overall, I had a pretty good reading month. I say that, and then the next one happens. The next book that I tried to read was The Bone Wars, which is the first book in the Pirates of Montana series by Aaron Evan. I tried to read this book mostly because it's about dinosaurs. Well, it's about dragons and dinosaurs. I got, how far did I get into this book? I got like almost a quarter of a way through this book, and it was so dense in this book. Honestly, it's a YA book, but it's written like an adult book trying to be a YA book. And unfortunately, they just went too deep into a lot of the science behind dinosaurs, and a lot of this stuff was stuff that honestly just either needed to be shortened or needed to be glossed over, because the plot did not move fast enough for me to stay interested. It ended up being the problem. So I did DNF this book, unfortunately. The next book I read, I actually have. It's the only one I have. But I read Around the World in 80 Days. My Jules Verne read is going well. I only have one left, and that's 5 weeks in a balloon, in this book at least. I really liked Around the World in 80 Days. Honestly, it was probably one of my favorite Jules Verne stories that I've read. Partially because I understood every single thing that was happening, which was very nice, but also because it was logical. It made sense. It was an adventure, and it was a lot of fun, and just, it was a good time. Around the World in 80 Days follows Phileas Fogg as he and his servant, Passepartout, I believe that's how you say it, as they attempt to travel around the world in 80 days, before airplanes, mind you, so this isn't an airplane thing. Using boats, trains, cars, elephants, whatever they can find, and basically it's in order for him to win a bet. And it's brilliant, it's a great idea, I love the premise behind it, and I thought it was so much fun, and honestly I would love to see a retelling of this, and see how people went with it. Maybe I'll write one, because I think it'd be like so much fun to just do Around the World, and let's see if you can do it in 80 days, and with no airplanes, and see what happens. And they pick up people along the way, they make friends, they make enemies, it's a great time. Highly recommend. Although I generally highly recommend Jules Verne in general. He writes very good characters, or he wrote very good characters, and he also did, there's a lot of science in his books that's actually pretty accurate from what I understand, so that's always good. Right, almost there. The last 2 books that I read, one was Influencer Island by Kyle Rutkin. This was an arc. It came out on the 30th. I got sent it on the 25th and finished it on the 27th. This was an interesting one. So this is a thriller that follows 2 different sort of timelines, and it's basically a bunch of influencers are invited to an island by one of the most famous up-and-coming artists, who has billions and trillions of dollars, who bought an island, basically. And they end up coming to this island thinking it's going to be one big party, and it ends up being a fight-to-the-death cult book. I was not expecting what happened. I really enjoyed the fact that this was told in a podcast setting. So this was told as if you were listening to a podcast. And as someone who listens to a lot of podcasts, it was done so well. I really enjoyed it. I really hope I didn't spoil anything. Maybe I don't know. It's hard to give you a synopsis of a thriller without spoiling things. But, jumping around a little bit, I really enjoyed this book. This book was a lot of fun and very intense, it kept me turning the pages, kept me going, kept me wanting to know what happened. Nothing was what I expected it to be. So yeah, it was interesting. Highly recommend. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5. Really did like that one, so. The last book that I read in July, oh my god, I can't believe I actually read this book. It is called The Time-Traveling Matchmaker by Janie Emmons. I have no real excuse for reading this. This was a book, again, sent to me by NetGalley. Thank you again, guys. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5 because just reading this book, I couldn't give it more than a 3. The premise behind it was good. Time-traveling matchmaker. Literally, taking people out of one time in order to match them with their soulmate. Okay, not really my cup of tea, but I was intrigued because there's also a conflict in this one where there's a guy who is hired, he is one of the matchmakers, and he's hired to find this girl, and I believe it's basically our year. And he finds her only to realize, she's my soulmate, not the guy I'm taking her back to. And shenanigans ensue. It was good, it was interesting. I don't like that all of it was from her perspective, and that the little bits that we got from his perspective were very scattered and didn't really show everything that he was doing. It's almost like they didn't want to get into the politics of being a time traveler, which I get, but if you're going to write a time traveling book, commit to it and make the politics, because that, I think, would have brought the book up to the next level. That being said, it was entertaining, it was cute. It got a 2.5. So, that's about what I got for you guys here. So, overall, this month was a highs and lows kind of month as far as reading. I did DNF 2 books this month, so I don't usually do that much, but yeah, I did. So I guess it was alright. It wasn't my best reading month, but I did get 10 books, I believe. I think I can count. I don't know. Maybe I can't count. But yeah. So there we go. That's what I got for you guys here today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, now is the perfect time to hit that thumbs up button and to subscribe. We post videos every Tuesday, Thursday, and the occasional Sunday. And if you want to be reminded when we post new videos, hit the little bell icon down below. I'm going to go to bed because I'm really tired and there's a cat scratching at the door. So, until next time, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep reading. Bye!